wherever you go, leave a hard print. This is dedicated to all those workers in mammograms and ultrasound and the breast health field that make a very stressful time a lot easier. Techniques used: rubbing alcohol, music paper collage, iridescent medium, stenciling on collage items, liner brush detailing, and art stylist detailing. This, of course, is part of the hashtag ThinkPinkArt event. I'm applying a layer of gesso to my page. I would say 99% of the time, this is always my first step. I just like the way medium goes on a gessoed page. After drying, I am going to apply a layer of pink paint. This is alizarin crimson. And I'm adding water. You'll see me spraying water every once in a while just to make the paint go on a little smoother. I could have mixed the paint with water in a dish and applied it that way, or I could be using a baby wipe at this point in time to help me smooth it on. Both techniques work. So once the page is completely covered and smooth, I will be drying it with my heat tool. Now I am going to take my Liquitex Basics acrylic paint and thin it down with water. It's just regular tap water that I have in my spray bottle. Some people prefer to use boiled water to keep out any contaminants. I don't have a problem. So I'm thinning out the paint. The rubbing alcohol technique that I'm using, the top layer of paint needs to be just right. Not too thin, not too thick. In the first time I tried this technique, I ended up having to do it about 4 or 5 times because I couldn't get it just right. So here's hoping that it works. So I'm applying the paint, and this paint needs to be wet when I start to use the rubbing alcohol that will coming up. So I'm moving quite fast, using a larger brush to cover the area. And one of the things that I discovered in the first time I tried my rubbing alcohol technique was to test in an area off to the side. So you'll see me doing that momentarily. I'm adding a lot of water, a little bit more paint, a little more pigment. So this is isopropyl alcohol, and I've just put it into a little squeezed bottle. If you don't have it, you can just dip your brush or pencil tip and let it drip off. So I'm testing in a corner to see if I have enough, if it's wet enough. And as you see, nothing happened. So I'm going in and spraying quite a bit of water on top and mixing the pigment and the wet across the page. And now you can see how the pink comes off. The rubbing alcohol pushes the black away to a certain degree, and you get that blossom color coming out. So I'm just adding a little water, because even if I add it on top, it does seem to allow the black paint to move and respond the way I want to get this technique. So again, this is just personal preference. I'm just continuing till I like what I see. It's a little darker in that corner, so I'm just playing with it. You can splatter from a paintbrush or from a toothbrush, and that will give a very different effect. So you can play around with this technique and try all sorts of things. So you can see the wonderful effect that this gives. So after I let that dry on its own, it is alcohol. So it's all, I do not want to use a heat tool with it because that can be flammable and I'm just not willing to risk it. So now I'm cutting out heart shapes. And my original plan was to use 3 hearts like that were kind of overlapped a little bit and do some doodling on them. And I have that written in my idea book. And I'm not really liking how it's fitting on this page, the size of the page. So I'm playing around with the music paper and cutting and doing different things. And this is what I end up with. So here you see me adding iridescent medium to the Liquitex pink paint, and I went with a pinker color. Now the iridescent medium, it has this iridescent quality that's basically in gel medium, and so it kind of makes a glaze. You can very easily see the music paper underneath, which is the effect that I was going with. You can do the same by mixing your Liquitex paint or your acrylic paint with gel medium, and you'll get a glaze. You just wouldn't have the iridescent piece. So I discovered that the hearts were a little too light. I didn't like the color, so I'm going in with the same color I use in the background, mixing it with iridescent medium and painting it on to the hearts. And I'm just putting them on a coffee filter so I don't have the bigger mess to clean up. So I've added Delta Ceramcoat Gold paint to the bigger heart, and I'm just heat drying it and selecting it, and I'm liking the effect. And I have a few other hearts here, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to paint them just in case. I'm not sure exactly where this is going. I've already deviated from my original plan, so wasn't sure. I decide that I'm going to stencil on with gold paint on the pink hearts to tie it into the pink center heart, just to make a little bit more cohesive. And I'm using a makeup sponge and my Folk Art plaid spiral stencil, my all-time fave stencil, to get that spirally look. I'm cleaning the stencil because I find if I don't do it right away, it ends up with a bigger problem. So after trying the black on one of the little gold hearts I had, I decided to put the black through the stencil on the bigger heart again. So now all my elements have that spiral technique. And you'll see one of those inner spirals kind of splotched. Later, off camera, I do go back and touch it up with gold paint and remove it, because of course it ends up smack dab in the middle of my project, and being the perfectionist I tend to be, that's all I saw. So there's the quote that I've printed out on paper that's a little thicker than regular Xerox paper, and I'm painting it with the Delta Ceramcoat paint. And I'm applying it with the Ranger blending tool using acrylic paint. And I've discovered that this works very well on this applicator, that the acrylic paint, if you pounce it out, doesn't get all crusty on the applicator. And I really like the ease that this makes to adding that on all my elements here. It makes it very quick and easy. I like it better than using a makeup sponge. So I'm just going on the outside and inside of all my elements. Now I'm applying gold using the blending tool to the edge of the page. Arranging my pieces, getting ready to adhere them with some matte medium. And I chose matte medium over Mod Podge my Mod Podge mat because it doesn't leave any marks, and the background is rather matte, and I just didn't want to add anything to that to take away from my overall effect. So I'm kind of reaching in and under, putting the matte medium underneath and on top on the hearts. And I deliberately cut the hearts so that I could get that linking happening. Over here, I ended up with it buckling a little bit, so I actually ripped one of the hearts in another place and patched it together so that it wasn't buckling. And I'm still playing around with those little hearts, you know. I had a general idea of where I was going with this. I've really deviated from the plan. You know, I'm playing around. Do I want another heart print? Do I want this here? Do I want that there? And just trial and error. What do I like? So here you see me with my liner brush, and I thinned the paint, the black acrylic paint, to the consistency of cream, and I'm just using my liner brush to darken the letters. They got a little light after applying the gold paint to the papers. You could use a marker, a Sharpie, whatever you have. I just find that I can go faster and more confidently with the liner brush, but you definitely don't have to rush out and go buy a liner brush. You can do this with whatever markers or gel pens that you have. Sorry for being off camera here. So here you can see on my one hand I'm holding one of my Inktense blocks, or a piece of my Inktense block, my black, and I'm just rubbing a wet paintbrush into it and trying to line the hearts. I want the hearts to pop out a little bit, so I'm kind of going around the inside and outside of the hearts and all the linking just to make it pop a little bit. I will also go around the words, which you see me doing right now. So I decide that I'm going to add some dots to my letters, add some detailing using the stylus. I'm using the thicker end of the stylus, and I'm just applying dots to the letters. This is an effect that I like using. And again, I find it quick and easy. I could have also outlined the letters in white. There's lots of options that you can do to just make it a little bit extra special. While I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the hearts, and I'm not really happy with how they're standing out. So I decide to go back in with my liner brush this time and make it a little bit bolder by outlining all the hearts and the words. And I find this time that I'm getting more of what I like. Again, you do not have to use a liner brush. You could use a Sharpie marker or a Pitt pen or whatever you have. And depending on the colors that you might use, something else might work just as well. You could also use a Stabilo All pencil, charcoal pencil. But I'm liking this much better than just with the Inktense block. So after I've covered all the hearts and all the words, I'm going to grab my dollar store gold gel pen, which I highly recommend because you can't beat the price. I think I got 3 for $1.25. I'm just going to sign my name with the gold and the date. And there's a still picture of the page. Wherever you go, leave a heart print. I hope you try some of the techniques that I've showed you. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, share, and as always, leave me a comment. Thank you.